Hey guys, so today's lesson is going to be about identifying functions. So functions is basically like a graph, a table, equation. So it is a very easy lesson as long as you pay attention. Now for this lesson, you're just going to need a sheet of paper. On one side of the sheet of paper, you're going to label it function. And on the other side of the sheet of paper, not a function. All right. Now first, we're going to start off with ordered pairs. So ordered pairs is something that we've been doing. So ordered pairs. Okay, so we're going to look at the difference between a function and not a function. So ordered pairs is just coordinate points. So we have 2, 3, 4, 7, 3, 7, and 1 and 2. Okay, so for an ordered pair, what you're gonna have to look at is the x. So with the function, if it's a function, the x doesn't repeat. With not a function, the x will repeat. So what you have to write down is that x cannot repeat. All right, so the x cannot repeat. So here we're looking at, these are ordered pairs. Remember, it's x and y. X always goes first, just like the alphabet, x and y, x and y. So basically we don't need the y. So all you're looking at is the x's. So are any of these x's repeating? So we have a 2, we have a 4, we have a 3, and we have a 1. Are any of those repeating? No, they're not repeating. So yes, it is a function. All right, so that one will be a function. Okay, let me go ahead and write another one. We have -2, 1, 7, 4, 2, 7, and 3, 1. So again, what I will do is label the x and the y, xy, the xy, xy. Just look at all your x's. Are any of my x's being repeated? No, they are not. Now we do have a -2 and we have a +2. A negative and a positive are not the same number. Okay, so none of my x's are being repeating. So yes, this one is a function, this one is a function. Now let's look at not a function so you can see how it looks. So we have here 2, 1, 7, 3, 2, 4, and 4, 1. And what we're going to do again is label the x and the y, the x and the y, and the x and the y. We're going to circle all the x's. Are any of my x's repeating? So yes, if you see the 2 here and you see the 2 here, those are being repeated. So this one is not a function. Okay, so it is not a function. It is that simple, guys. So if it is a function, x is not repeating. If it's not a function, x is repeating. Okay, so now let's look at, let me go ahead and clear the page. So we're going to look at, again, we're going to look at function and not a function. And now we're going to talk about a table. So same thing with the table. If you have a table, I can have 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 7, 1, 3. Again, all I'm doing is looking at my x, only the x. So remember, with the function, x cannot repeat. Again, x cannot repeat. So we have 2, we have 3, we have 4, we have 5. Are any of my x's being repeating? So no, none of my x's are repeating. So this one is a function. That easy, guys. It is that easy. So let's look at an example for not a function. So I have my table here. Let's put 2, 7, 2, 4. Again. And let's put 1, 1, 1, 1. Again, does it matter if the y's are repeating? No, the y's do not matter. The ones that matter are the y's. So we're going to look at the the ones that matter are the x. So we're going to be looking at the x's. Are any of my x's repeating? Yes, they are. 2 and 2 are being repeating. So this one is not a function. All right. So again, if it is a function, none of my x's are repeating. If it is not a function, you will find x's repeating. All right, so let's look at the next example. Let me clear my canvas again. So we're going to have, on one side, we're going to have function. And on the other side, we're going to have not a function. Now we're going to go into something called mapping. This is probably the first time you've seen a mapping. So with the mapping, it's kind of like a table, but sometimes you'll see 2 circles like this. The first circle is the x, and the second circle is the y. So just like a table, x always comes first. Now with a mapping, you're going to see the numbers here. So we can have 1, 2, and 3. And I don't know, 4, 7, 8. I'm just making up numbers. So with the mapping, what's going to happen is you're going to have arrows coming out from the x's. Okay, so you're going to have arrows coming out from the x's. Well, the 7 is alone. Let's take it off right here. So the way that you look at this is for a mapping. Again, don't pay attention to the y. Do not pay attention to the y. What you have to pay attention is to the x. You have to see only one arrow coming out from each x. So only one arrow. So is there one arrow here? Yes. Is there one arrow here? Yes. Is there one arrow here? Yes. So what does that mean? That none of my x's are being repeated. So this one is a function. Okay. And again, guys, you can definitely go back and watch this video, pause the video, make sure that you're taking notes. You're going to have practice after the video. You're going to have a guided practice. And then on Tuesday, you're going to have more practice to do. So you guys can keep practicing on functions and not a function. All right, so now we're going to look at how a mapping is not a function. So if I have the 2 circles, again, it's like a table. We're going to have x and we're going to have y. I'm going to write 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8. Now with a not a function, just look at my arrows. So what's going on here? Again, we're not going to pay attention to the y's. The y's do not matter. We're going to pay attention to the x. How many arrows are coming out from this one right here? 1 and 2. So that means there are 2 1s. There are 2 1s and the ones are in my x side. So that means there are 2 x's here being repeated. There's 1 arrow and there are 2 arrows coming out from this 3. So in other words, for you to understand, if you want to write it in a table form, so let me go ahead and write it in a table form. 1 is going with 4 over here. And I know you can't see it anymore. But 1 is with 4 right here. And then 1 is also with 7. 2 is with 7. 3 is with 7. And 3 is also with 8. So we have 1 being repeating and we have the 3's being repeated. So this is another way that you can do mappings. If you look at this side, we had 1 was with 4, 2 was with 4, but 3 was with 8. So none of my x's was repeating on this side. Okay, so again, for a function, you only have 1 arrow coming out from each x. For not a function, you're going to have 2 or more, or I mean more than 1 coming out from an x. That means the x is being repeated. All right. Now the last one that I'm going to go over is a graph. So again, if you are writing down notes on your sheet of paper, one side is function and one side is not a function. Now we're going to talk about graphs. Now graphs can be a little bit tricky depending on the graph that they give you. So for functions, so if I have a graph that's a function, and I'm trying to use different colors here so you guys can see the graphs. So let's do this graph first. If I have a line, just a line, what you have to do is something called the vertical line test. So with the vertical line test means you just create random lines. It doesn't matter how many lines, you just create lines. So I'm gonna do it blue. So just lines, 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 up and down, up and down. Now, for you to know if an x is repeating, that those vertical lines that you draw must only touch the line one time. This one touch one time, 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 this one, this one. All right, so let me go ahead and create another table. Graph. Let me see, what line do I create? Look at this line. If I do this, the vertical line test, how many times is each line touching the line right here, the vertical lines? They're only touching one time. Okay? They're only touching one time. So let me go back and let me create more. So hopefully you can see it. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. All right. So let me create another one here. And again, all you have to do is it's a vertical line test. That's what it's called. What about this one right here? Again, if I create a vertical line test, how many times is each line touching my main line? Well, it's only touching one time. So that means the x-axis is not being repeated. Okay. Now you also have scatter plots. You guys remember scatter plots with the linear and non-linear? So with scatter plots, so let's say if I have my graph, but then I have dots. Now this will probably be more clear. The way that you do this is that you cannot have same thing, you cannot have more than one dot on a line. So of course I'm not doing it perfect, but if you can see what I mean, there's no more than one dot on each line. Okay, So now let's move on to not a function. So I feel like not a function, whenever they're not a function, is probably easier to tell. So for example, if I have this one right here, and I create a vertical line test, look what happens. How many times is each line touching? Well, it's touching over here. The same line is touching over here. Touching over here, touching over here, over here, over here. So it's touching 2 times. So that means my x is being repeated. All right. So if I do another example, it will be a circle. What about a circle? So a circle, same thing. If I do vertical line test, what happens? It touched right here and it touched right here. So it is touching twice. Okay. All right, I'm gonna give you now a hard one. Let's see. Let me erase this one. And now what if I just do a straight line like this? What if I just do a straight line like that? Well, if I do a vertical line test, remember vertical is up and down. If I do a vertical line test, what's going on? Well, all of these are points, aren't they? So this is not a function. Not a function. No. Okay. Let's look at a scatter plot. So a scatter plot, again, points are scattered. So if I have a scatter plot with, and of course, like I said, on your tests, they will be more clear. But you can definitely see here, like just looking at this one right here, they are on the same line. So this one, they're on the same line, and this one, they're on the same line. So this one is not a function. Okay. So you will definitely have better examples for graphs as long as you do a vertical line test. There cannot be no more than 2 points on a line. Okay. So like if I have this, just some random, if I do the vertical line test, well, you see all these points are on the same line. All right. So again, guys, the main focus on this is that the x for functions, x cannot repeat. If it is not a function, the x is being repeated. It's easy to tell on a table, on an order pair, and on a mapping. Remember, on an order pair, x is always first, so circle all your x's and see if any of them are repeating. On a table, again, focus on the x only and see if any of the x's are repeating. For mapping, you have to look at that only one arrow is coming out from each x. And for the graph, you have to do a vertical line test. All right, guys, if you have any questions, please message us.